episodes later, as Jake, Devin, Alexi, and Nadine are still trying to determine if their reprogrammed Chucky is really dangerous or not. He literally kills a fly, foreshadowing that he's not the harmless doll that Jake thinks he is. One more maybe psycho reference: when Tiffany starts with that Meg Tiffany, the music sounds a lot like the music itself. After awakening from a bad dream, Glenn can be seen reading the This novel was written by British author Paul Griffith, called back to Glenn's childhood at 1910 before ever being reborn as a human. That day, when Tiffany asked what happened to Mika and Glenda, I noticed Glen's eye get a little cold.
Tell me what Glenda took me.
This is something that happened in scene. Glenn's eye would twitch under stressful circumstances that are just too much real. Tiffany's outfit during the scene continued these strange clothing, probably referencing her career as a professional poker player, which I talked about in season 1. Anyway, after Glenn discovers the real Jen Tilly trapped in doll form, Tiffany burns down the house, which feels very unnecessary. Back at school, the brainwashed Scout Chucky fights and defeats Buckshot, and in the aftermath, Father Bryce orders Sister Ruth to throw away the tattered doll. It's an important Chucky tradition for someone to try to crash the antagonistic film. This is the 8th time someone has attempted. As we get further into the season, there are more and more callbacks to the original movie scene. For example, Andy is now being kept prisoner by Chucky in a cabin where he's tortured. It's revenge for when Andy kept Chucky's head as his prisoner in his cabin and tortured. Cool detail about the cabin: if you bring up the lights, you can see the many knives stored overhead, probably the knives of each of the Chuckies that the Colonel has killed. Sister Ruth is the next to discover that Chucky is alive, and she tells her that she should go on. She told Tiffany the same thing when they first met in the flashback of season 1, which suggests he may have a thing for Chucky. As Kyle, Mika, and Glenda are staying in a hotel in Richmond, New Jersey, Kyle has a pack of cigarettes labeled Pink Tail. As far as I know, this isn't a brand that you can still find, so it must be a reference to J.T.K.'s from Bride of Chucky, one of the few surviving characters who is making an appearance in the TV series. Also, Kyle has a necklace that says Mom on it, which is a strange thing for an orphan to have. A report comes on the TV breaking the news that Jennifer Tilly is now wanted for murder. The photo that they use is from the 2019 Saturn photo. The Saturns were briefly mentioned by Jake and Devin in season 1. If you're curious, the photo used in the second news report, where Tiffany freaks out about the terrible picture they used for, was taken at the premiere of Panic Room in 2002. It's weird that they would use such an old photo, but it's the perfect opportunity for me to promote my Things You Miss episode on Panic. At Lord Incarnate, Father Bryce puts the school on lockdown, but Lexi and Nadine are able to reach Jake and Devin's room anyway by climbing out of their window and into the boys' room. They probably expected us to forget that they showed the outside of Lexi and Nadine's room, and unless they're both Spider-Man, there's no way the girls pulled this off. The creators of the show need to stop underestimating. I didn't forget when the twins' birthday is, and I didn't forget what the exterior of the school looks like either. And you help some ambush in the secret tunnel, but before you can get this out, Dr. Mixer shows up with a gun and takes Chucky away. I'm not quite sure how they let her do this. Yeah, she has a gun, but there are 5 of them. If she didn't try to use the gun, the rest of them could quickly come up. Then she somehow beats up Andy. She has a chance to shoot him right here, but Episode 7 is called Going to the Past. I think it's referring to a lyric from the Dixie Cut song Chapel of Blood. This episode is all about the exorcism of Chucky returning for Chucky time to leave Nico's body. We later find out this is kind of pointless because Dr. Mixter already has a backup Chucky in her safe. I'll ignore that now because I have something else that I would like to complain about.
Were you or a loved one admitted to a San Diego juvenile detention facility, including Kearney Mesa, San Diego Juvenile, Rancho del Campo, Camp Barrett, or any other facility? A global settlement may be coming in 2025. These facilities allegedly failed to protect vulnerable patients for decades, putting their safety at risk, and now landmark lawsuits are forcing them to pay victims of sexual abuse and mistreatment. This isn't just talk. More than 500 former detainees have already signed on to be part of it. The San Diego Tribune, CBS, and Fox News are covering this because it's following the exact same pattern as the recent LA County settlement, where victims are receiving their share of the $4 billion payout by first filling out a simple qualification form. Here's what most former
the characters have to overcome in every installment is Chuck, but there are also obstacles on a character level in each movie. In Child's Play, Andy is not taken seriously because he's a kid. In Cursed, Nika wants to get her family to see her as a person, not see her for her disability. Season 2 is all about Jake and Devin wanting those around them to accept their relationship. They are trapped in a school and a religion that doesn't accept them. They're constantly trying to invalidate that religion. So I just find it weird that they successfully perform an exorcism at the end, because doesn't that kind of say that the religion really does have power? It's not super shocking because voodoo is a religion that gave Chucky power in the very first movie, but it feels somewhat contradictory. The deal to perform the exorcism is struck when Kyle shows up with a gun, leveling the playing field against Dr. Nick. Because holding each other at gunpoint is the perfect time to strike up a casual conversation about women's health. At this point, everyone is brought together to help perform the exorcism, other than Tiffany, Jennifer, and Glenn, who are still on the list. However, Jennifer did not make it. After 18 years of being trapped inside the stall, she seizes her opportunity to make a and gets whacked by a truck. This is a franchise called David from Bride of Chucky suffers the exact same fate. He is hit by a truck while trying to escape from Tiffany's arms. While preparations are made to perform the exorcism, Chucky is tied out, leaving him to verbally torture others. Chucky obeys torture. This is a reference to the way that Hannibal Lecter was tied up in Silence of the Lambs, and he even called out the same line. If you watched my season 1 episode, you learned about how Don Mancini's time on the Hannibal TV show may have been the reason that Chucky made the move to syndicated programming in the first place. But the episode is primarily more of a takeoff on another classic horror. The movie he's referring to is The Exorcist, where the girl Regan is possessed by the demon Pazuzu to say the same word. The possession causes her to switch from the innocent girl to the evil demon, holding psychological attacks without pending it. We see Scout Chucky do the same thing, as he toggles between good Chucky and evil Chucky. Chucky also takes after Regan by projectile vomiting substance and levitating up in the air, just like in The Exorcist. The ending of The Exorcist involves the possession being passed to the priest shortly before he dies. Chucky follows suit, being frozen in the cover. Now all they have to do is transfer Chucky Prime's soul out of Nika's body into the doll. However, all the guns have been locked up at this point. I don't understand why they don't just tie up Dr. Mixer first, then exorcise Chucky from Nika's body. But they don't think of it. The show is so frustrating. This mistake allows Sister Ruth to show up and rescue the movie from Chucky, but she's stopped by Gwen using a knife hidden away by Charles Lee Ray as a kid. The season finale is called Chucky Action because it takes place on Christmas, like the 2003 Christmas movie Love Actually. We see Dr. Mixter, now possessed by Chucky Prime, go into the safe at her office to retrieve the spare voodoo. The safe passcode is 110988 or 110988, the release date of the original Child. Another Easter egg to the original is the maker of the safe, Kudo Safe. This isn't the real brand, so it must be another reference to Charles's old accomplice, Kudo. The intro of this episode shows many of the weapons that Chucky has used over the years, including the snake-adorned knife seen in the original and in Curse, the hammer used to knock that Maggie out the window in the original, the red chainsaw used in this episode, he used our kitchen knife, which is used many times, and the yardstick that he beat Miss Caldwell with in Child's Play 2. Lexi asks her mom if her orphan friends can stay for the holidays while Mrs. Cross is live streaming. She claims that she was streaming to 100,000 followers, which is total BS. If I go on Twitch or YouTube right now, the top channels are getting maybe a quarter of it. I guarantee no one is tuning in to watch a small-town mayor decorate her Christmas tree on Facebook, no lies. And later, she claims that
I've always listened to log my
no, there are only 45,000 people in Hackensack. Come on, I'm only streaming that nativity scene. The on-screen phone POV doesn't match up with how she's moving around the phone. How do you screw that up? Inside, Caroline and Val, who is secretly Chucky in disguise, are watching the news about what happened at the Logan Carmen school. This calls back to Child's Play 1, where Andy and Chucky watch the news for updates on Eddie Kruger. I already talked about the defibrillator used to take out the hospital security guy being another potential Child's Play. Like the shock device in 1, why would they even have a tool powerful enough to light someone on fire in the hospital? And are we just supposed to assume that there are no smoke detectors in this hospital? Make it make sense. The season-long revisits you see to Chucky comes full circle when Glenn and Glenda transfer back into the doll body from the movie, taking on the new name Gigi. As another tribute to Seed, Gigi has a jacket patch that resembles one of the Seed of Chucky posters. One of the other patches is Tiffany's original tattoo. But the business between Chucky and the trio of Jake, Devin, and Lexi is not finished yet. He breaks into the house through the chimney, as he had in Child's Play and in season 1. Also, this season began with him escaping up a chimney, and now he's Tiffany Valentine can also be found breaking into the house, looking for the Belle doll to transfer her own soul into, but she's caught by Mrs. Cross.
Oh my god, this is so random. And I'm sorry for the breaking in your house. Oh no, room.
This is it. This is the script we're going. Okay. Chucky season 2 ends with one final similarity to Steven. Both stories involve Chucky breaking into somewhere he's not supposed to be, trying to get revenge on Tiffany, and getting a surprise attack from the kid. Only this time, there's another twist on top of it. A new evil the whole time. Caroline was evil the whole time. Who could have seen this coming? I realized that I was kind of negative during this episode. I usually try to give my analysis with more of a neutral tone, but it's just hard when the characters don't make smart choices. Like, why did Lexi leave the chainsaw downstairs when she knew that Tiffany was still upstairs? It's just frustrating. But I do have hope. At the beginning of this video, I discussed how season 1 was an homage to Child's Play 2, and disappointingly, season 2 falls back into the old ways of season 2. But what if that's not necessarily the intention? What if season 1 is actually a tribute to the entire Child's Play arc? Child's Play 2, and Child's Play 3. That would mean that season 2 is actually a tribute to the Bride Seed arc. Chucky has been reviewed in 3, so maybe, just maybe, season 3 will be focused on the cursed culprit, bringing back the horror, the suspense, psychological manipulation, and the tragedy. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'll be here to cover season 3 once it's available, and I'll be updating my Chucky character timelines as well. So make sure you subscribe to see these world, new horrors every week, ring the death bell for all notifications. Been based on one of the films from the original movie. Season 1 tried to portray the magic of Child's Play 2.
We've taken a lot of pains to mimic the specific look of the doll himself from Child's Play 2.
And season 2 was clearly the spiritual sequel to the fifth entry of it. Early on in season 3, we see an investigator lay down using 2, 5, and 6. So does that mean that season 3 was all in the Chucky movie? Well, not exactly. This time, the series does it better. Opening with a power outage in the White House, the president's son who's a clue about the introduction to the spirit realm that will come later on in the series. The next day, we're reintroduced to the main protagonist, Jay, who mentions that he's working on his last art, calling it a commentary on the dark side of the most popular doll, but it will only be complete once he has a good one, a doll that has become impossible. This is a hint that we may be getting close to the end of the entire Chucky franchise. With no good guy dolls left to move into, Chucky's soul will eventually hit the vessel. There's more evidence to suggest that the all-around series is like the president of that time, Henry Collins, has a room covered in dinosaurs, which may be a thematic parallel to the idea that Chucky and the two guys could be going. Or it could just be a parallel to any person. But given that Chucky appears on the not long before the entire place emerges around, we have to believe that the general public is also on the verge of believing the doll seen at many bizarre crime scenes over the last 30 years. Maybe Chucky should spend some time around some lower profile people.
Police say the man you see right there holding a Chucky doll was using that toy to scare people outside on the market.
Yet, that's a real news story that just happened, despite the cancellation of the Chucky TV series. But the series wasn't about to go out without and sneak a few more secrets past me. But luckily, I am like a Secret Service agent. Nothing gets past me. The hidden meaning of the truth. So familiar with the information, the positive or missing moments, these are the things that you might have missed in the sequel. I gotta admit, I was not particularly excited about Chucky season 3, given the big step away from horror in season 2 and the only thing as bad as being lectured on religion is being lectured on politics. So it took me a long time to get to this film, but my audience was pretty persistent with the request for me to talk about it. So here we are. You little freaks better actually watch this while it's here. But season 3 was not the 6 hours of political cringe that I expected it to be. The president's storyline, as far as I can tell, was just an original idea, rather than some kind of political prose ride session being heavy-handed commentary about war and reform. The man in office, James Collins, is a new contender, who runs the country under a policy of full transparency to the people. So instead of a battle between a party, there's a battle of ideas, transparency versus secrecy, something I'll revisit during my talk. I just wanted to say, I think it's very tasteful. In a world where people are way too comfortable sharing their personal political opinions all the time, no matter how people but the real reason it seems to be said in the White House appears to be not for the government, but rather for the building's potential as a public building, which is established right from the get-go. Let's get in to the While previous seasons had episode titles that sometimes parodied existing movie titles, like Season 1's Cape Clear or Season 2's Death in the Nile, Season 3's episodes were just straight up movie titles with no changes or alterations. And that starts off with Murder at 60 Times, 1997 political story about a detective investigating murder at It starts with the Chuck causing a power outage and the first family having to be relocated to safety, during which the teenage son, Grant Collins, is caught smoking by the Secret Service. Grant's smoking is ironic because it's in front of his Just Say No poster, which was an advertising campaign that was part of the U.S.'s war on drugs. The woman on the poster is former President Ronald Reagan's wife, Natalie. I don't know why she put herself on the poster. I don't even do drugs, so I agree with the message, but she just looks like someone who would be the fun place, you know? But what has even less chill is seen in the other side of it. This clown Jack in the Box. There seems to be a reference to the poster for Child's Play, too, because what kid would actually want to have this? It's gotta be an Easter egg. And it's probably no coincidence that this is the same poster that gets splattered with the brains of the Secret Service agent that Chucky eliminates for his first California season. The next day, we catch back up with Kid, who's in the middle of doing a live stream on stage. You know, not someone recording two teenagers. In fact, we know the creators of the show are aware that Facebook is not popular with the kids, because they made a joke about it in season 1.
Hey, what?
For some reason, all of the usernames look like passwords. One of the usernames is Billy#B#Kid, which is the name of an outlaw in the old American West who was said to have been shot dead after escaping prison, but rumors of his survival persisted for decades after his death. This could be a nod to Chucky, or maybe even an alias of Chucky himself. Charles Lee Ray has officially been dead for a long time, but there are all these rumors of his continued survival in the United States. That morning, we tried to have a meeting with the governor of Rhode Island.
The governor of Rhode Island.
Could that maybe be a nod to Curse of Chucky, which took place in Rhode Island? I'll admit that one's kind of dumb, but hey, sometimes people like the dumb. I mean, just look how many followers every big Twitch streamer has. And speaking of dumb, my next thing you missed is honesty. Story-wise, this is before Halloween, not after. I hereby declare that canonically, her computer is broken. President Collins meets with his wife, Charlotte, who's stressing herself out over the colors that she's going to use to decorate the White House, and he tells her that he doesn't want her to put too much money. This is funny in retrospect, because she basically ends up wearing the largest clothes of anyone until she starts killing off White House staff members, and it's up to her to try to hide it from the public. The first one of those deaths is just moments later, but this first one is not kept secret from the press. We see various fictional news channels, like News Channel 2, TNC, which seems to be a parody of CNN, and a host of others. It feels like a missed opportunity. I should have included WDOL from the original movie. Maybe that was just a local Chicago thing. Season 3, Episode 2 is called Arthur That One. It's the name of a 2008 film about a boy who befriends a vampire girl in his apartment house. But in the case of the Chucky episode, it's about Grant letting in Lexi, who wants to use him to get to Chucky. I get that they're trying to mimic the circumstances of what the lesbian is, who's literally choosing her to let her into the White House, but this is one of the most ridiculous storylines of the so far. It's shown that the president's son has 2.1 million followers. He would never invite some random comedian to meet up. There's no way that would be allowed, right? And then instead of screening her at one location and then bringing her to the actual location, he's just waiting there like a sitting duck. It's gotta be the easiest assassination target of all time.
Indeed, my friends, come out, okay? Here they are, IRL.
You're not even gonna check them? Are you kidding me? This dude had one job, and he's just like, yeah, go ahead. Meanwhile, back at the White House, a CIA agent named Warren Price is brought in to investigate the murder and notices good guy footprints in the closet. A callback to the original movie, where investigators found that Chucky left footprints at the scene of his first ever crime in Delta. Shockingly, this isn't enough to determine that Chucky committed this crime, or the next one where he takes out the president's secretary, because apparently they just don't have cameras in the White House. Come on, this is supposed to be one of the most secure buildings in the world, and it's not like this one has been taken out of the privacy precaution.
I think you brand yourself as President Transparency.
The main trio, Jake, Trevor, and Mikey, are staying in the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. And I think this plays into the whole transparency versus privacy theme that runs through the whole scene. The Watergate Hotel is no known for its standard where 5 men were arrested for breaking into the Democratic office behind wiretap and state documents. And the then President Richard Nixon was reported ordering the FBI's closer investigation to cover it up, which was considered an obstruction of justice. Nixon was pressured to resign to avoid impeachment.
People have got to know whether or not their president's son. Why not?
It's probably the most well-known example of secrecy, and it's kind of strange that the hotel has posters and newspapers on the wall there because of the Watergate scandal. I'm pretty sure it's considered one of the most shameful moments in American history. Do you think they would want to distance themselves? By the way, I looked up a room tour, and no such posters seem to exist at these real life hotels. Additionally, the characters are staying in room 1105.
Watergate Hotel room 1105.
That number is also tied to secrecy. In British lore, 1105 represents the 5th of November, also known as God's Office, where God's Office until conspirators attempted to blow up the House of Parliament and assassinate King James. No fantasy, the movie V for Vendetta adapts the United States as a symbol of rebellion, exposing their cruelty. In Chucky, the battle of transparency versus secrecy plays out between the ideals of President Holmes, transparency, and Lord Christ, who represents secrecy. There are other references to this too. The coffee shop that they use Grant at is on more so than the coding system that uses dots and dashes to send people messages. Anyway, when they finally meet Grant, he seems to be something of an influencer himself.
Hold on. It says you guys will call him?
Wow. Hashtag fake friends. Back at the hotel that afternoon, the kids are still trying to get their study in.
William Jennings Bryan's proposed speech in 1896 was a polemic against gold.
More accurately, the gold standard. The speech is actually famous for the line, "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold," which may be a subtle reference to Chucky's crucifixion in the previous season. Just as Jennings Bryan felt that the gold standard put an unjust burden on the American people, Jake, Devin, and Lexi feel that they are burdened with having to destroy Chucky. In order to do so, they research ideas to smuggle weapons into the White House where Chucky is hiding using creative Halloween costumes. They do this on a site called Fedora. However, before they can get into the White House Halloween party, their caretaker, Miss Fairchild, has to speak with the First Lady. During this conversation, there's a special focus to frame this picture of Edith Roosevelt, who is known for supporting her husband, Theodore Roosevelt, from a behind-the-scenes role. Kind of like Charlotte is doing in this episode, by keeping the fatal crimes committed inside the executive mansion's walls a secret. I'm convinced this parallel is intentional because of how they zoom in on it after she leaves the room to go conspire with Trump. And when that happens, the doll of death takes his third victim by strangling the corrupting a symbol of freedom to use as a symbol of violence. But that episode will contain a much more precise message. Season 3, episode 3 is titled Jack, named after a 2009 movie about high school president and fighting some of the best of them. In the context of discussing, actress and Chloe's body was possessed by Chucky's girlfriend, Tiffany Valentine. I'd like to point out that I already made that joke 3 years ago with my Tiffany Valentine. Even my first. In this one, we see the aftermath of Tiffany's arrest in season 2, where Chucky and Caroline go on the road together. The cab driver mistakes Chucky for an AI robot.
Oh, let's go the interactive AI robot.
This is a reference to the 2019 Charles Rodriguez, essentially an AI-powered android. That takes place in a separate universe, though, so this is more of an Easter egg. The episode also features a dream sequence with Chucky spying on Andy from outside the window, just like Michael Myers in Halloween. This alone might not be significant, but it's part of a long line of Halloween references in the franchise. Speed of Chucky and Season 1, Episode 1 both steal the same opening. And that's not the only callbacks to the classic era of slasher. Although he's only dreaming, Chucky's method of killing Andy involves him tying his rival's limbs to the bed at night.
Just like the other things,
This is another callback from Child's Play 2, where Chucky tied Andy to the bed during his sleep and attempted to transfer the soul into Andy's body before the fun was opened to the child.
Right, oh, it's it now.
Yeah, that one's tough to talk your way out. 33 years later, not much has changed, and Chucky is still dealing with the doll body that he's not entirely satisfied. He flips through the beauty of the remedies left behind. Somehow the book got way longer. In Bride of Chucky, Tiffany flips through about half of the book to reach page 77, so we could assume that there are only about 150 pages. But in this, Chucky is seen on page 311. Maybe it's a new edition, or maybe that's just the power of voodoo. By the way, each page is just the same text over and over. It's basically just a description of voodoo and the law. It takes a voodoo doctor to determine that Chucky is dying and needs to kill a house marred by evil. So he and Caroline go into not an evil, but a dash. For those following my entire series of Chucky episodes, another example of the franchise not knowing if it wants to use real or fake friends. Dasher is a fiction company, but in season 1, it was I'm sure this will be obvious from the review, but the house that they dash to is the owner. For those not familiar, Ronald DeFeo Jr. is the oldest son of the DeFeo family, who in 1974 shot his parents and siblings while they slept for a total of 6 victims. The same number that Chucky used to please Damballa and get back in the good graces. The house is famous because the Lutz family moved in 75 and claimed it was extremely haunted. So paranormal investigators Ed and Lauren came to investigate, which has been the subject of many movies, including The Amityville Horror and The Conjuring 2. So there you go. Season 3, episode 4 is titled West Return, and is named after an announcement in the horror movie. And the title makes sense especially because this is the Halloween season. But it starts with Tiffany being in prison for the time. She's wearing a necklace that says, "It's different," a reference to a line from Britney Spears' 2007 song, Given Up. This was during the time that Britney Spears first started crashing out. And holy crap, she's been crashing out for the last 18 years now. So this fashion statement from Tiffany carries similar connotations. But then again, she's all she finds herself on death row. But it's not all doom and gloom, because she gets to meet one of her favorite celebrity chefs, Edwin Eller. Kind of a connection to Bride of Chucky, where at the beginning she was a fan of a different celebrity filmmaker who also did time in prison, Martha Stewart. And there's another Bride callback when she first meets Edwin. Evelyn is watching the movie Bride of Frankenstein, which was the same movie that Tip was watching in the bath when she was killed for the first time.